In taking a photographic image with a camera, we can modify the blurriness or the sharpness of an image. And a lot of that obviously comes into play with the lens and the focus of the lens, but we can also do it with shutter speed, in that a very quick shutter speed will stop movement, but a longer shutter speed will see the movement. We often see this in images of flowing water. We can make the water look still with a very fast shutter speed, or we can see the flow of the water with a slow shutter speed. The aperture setting of the camera, referred to as the f-stop, dictates how much of the lens is opening in taking that photo. We're opening just a small portion, say an f-stop of 22, we're going to get a much broader depth of field where both an item in the foreground and the background can be relatively in focus. Where we're opening up the aperture more, say with an f-stop of 4, we're going to have a focal point that's very short. And so in this case, at the bottom photo you see there, the branch is in focus, but the background of the trees is very much blurred and out of focus. But in Photoshop, we have a group of tools in the painting section for blurring areas of an image, sharpening areas, or smudging areas. And I think of the smudge as sort of a very specialized blur. Now this image of the cabin, we want to focus in on the cabin itself. So the photographer probably had a very large f-stop. We took this photo because the trees are in focus as well. We want to make those trees a little blurrier. So I'm going to take the blur tool. I'm going to bring myself up to a pretty large size, about 400 pixels. I'm going to set this to a semi-soft brush. I'm going to brush in over the trees, make them blurrier, but I'm going to do this on another layer. And I like to work non-destructively in Photoshop. So if I make a mistake, and I always go back to the original. So I'm going to take this background layer, I'm simply going to drag it down here to this little plus sign at the bottom. That'll give me a copy of that. So I want to work on that copy. In fact, I'm going to turn the visibility of the background layer off. And now I'm just going to come in and just simply blur the trees, going over them with the blur tool. And of course, the more we go over this, the more blurry it will become. You can also adjust the flow. My strength is pretty high at 95%. That gives the focal point more to the cabin than the trees behind it. And if we want to see the difference here, there was the original, there is the blurred view. The Sharpen tool, and again I'm going to work on another version of the background. Let's name this copy Sharpen. We'll name this one Blur. Let's go to the Sharpen layer. So same thing here, I'm going to take the Sharpen tool, and again I'll give myself a little bit larger brush. About a medium hardness. And of course we can change our brush size using the brackets on the keyboard once I dismiss that dialog. And I'm going to come in here and just sharpen the cabin. Now you may not see a whole lot happening there, but let's take a look at the original. If you focus in on the sign above the door, a little more blurry there, much sharper. Might want to do the rocks here as well. Now you can also over sharpen things where you start to get this pattern. So I'm getting this kind of rough pattern. That's not good. So I'm going to go into my history and just kind of go back a little bit. Original, sharpened. You can only see the sharpening effect with the planters over the windows. Makes a big difference there. Now the last tool we have here is the Smudge tool. So again, I'm going to duplicate this layer. And we'll call this one Smudge. The Smudge tool is sort of like finger painting. I'm going to get a little bit larger brush. And again, semi-soft. And I'm just simply going to get rid of some of the rocks here by smudging the snow over the rocks. We've seen other tools like the healing brush that work on this as well, but this is how we might use the smudge tool. And again, before, after. One little tip here, if you want to combine all these layers, there is an option for merge down or merge visible or flatten the image. In this case, those would all flatten this into one layer. The other thing I like to do is I like to keep those layers intact, but I want to create a layer that has all that combined. Actually, our smudge layer is all those combined because it included the blur and the sharpen. But maybe we do those as separate layers from the original. So if that was the case, we can do a Shift Control Alt N E and get a new composite layer that is all of the layers combined that are visible. Portrait photographers use the blur and sharpen tools a lot on images of people. And I'm going to zoom in here on this image so we can really kind of see the facial features. So again, going back to the blur tool. Again, let me work on a background, a copy of this background. So I'm going to take the blur tool and I'm going to just kind of focus in here on the darkness under the eyes, a little bit of bags, a little bit of wrinkles there. Just soften those up. A little bit here across the forehead. Do a little bit on the nose. Let's take a look at the before and the after. Very subtle. I have my strength set at 95%. Oftentimes I work with images. I do much lesser than that and go over it multiple times. Let's take a look how we might use the Sharpen tool. So for the Sharpen tool here, I'm going to zoom in on the eyes. I'm going to make those eyes nice and sharp. Reduce my brush down to about the pupil of the eye. Come in here and just go over this a few times. Same thing over here. And I'm going to zoom out. Before, after. Makes the eyes just pop. Now for the smudge tool, we could take the smudge tool and come in here to her lips, which look a little cracked, and just kind of smudge those a little bit. It's almost like we're applying more lipstick. So again, before, after. We might also increase our makeup a little bit. One more use of the smudge tool. So the client liked this image for a brochure they're putting together, but they want the woman to have much longer nails. Again, I'm going to work on the back, copy the background, get a smaller brush, and all I'm going to do is grab the nail here and just simply smudge it. And we've extended the nails. There are filters for blurring and sharpening we'll look at down the road, which allow us to have all kinds of effects. So we can do radial blurs, we can do lens blurs, lots of ways to sharpen, and lots of different techniques for sharpening photos. Most of your professional photographers sharpen all of their photos. In terms of the smudge tool, there's also a filter called Liquify, which allows us to do all kinds of things in terms of smudging areas and protecting areas from being smudged. But that's the blur, the sharpen, and the smudge tools. If you'd like to see more videos in the Photoshop Practicum playlist, click the title at the bottom. If you'd like to be alerted to new videos, please click my photo in the top right to subscribe to the channel.